Travel Adventures with Marilyn and Craig. While researching YouTube on places to travel and things to see, we found some interesting sites. But the information about those locations and what to do once you get there was always a little limited.
I love to take pictures.
And I love shooting video.
And we both love to travel.
So what could be better than to share our travel adventures on YouTube for those of you that want to learn from our experiences. Havana, Cuba, a city on an island in the Caribbean, a short 90 miles from Key West, Florida, and a political thorn in the side of the United States for over 60 years. The Obama administration began to allow limited travel to Cuba, a communist island, in an attempt to normalize relations. Today and in the future, travel to Cuba may again be limited by the Trump administration. Because we are always game for a new adventure, we decided to travel to Cuba before the political climate changed again. The Cuban government requires a visa for entry onto the island. On this travel adventure, we went on a short 4-day cruise on the Norwegian Sky. It was built in 1999 and holds 3,200 passengers. For this adventure, we contacted our Florida travel companions, Connie and the other Marilyn, who were both on board immediately. They were so excited that they invited 2 more travel companions, Susan and Allie, also from Florida. The group included my Marilyn, as I refer to her, the boss of me, and of course, me. I'm Craig. We boarded the ship at the Miami Cruise Terminal and set sail for Havana. By the next morning, we were traveling past the famous Havana Lighthouse and the fortifications that were built by the Spanish in the 15th century to protect the harbor. After breakfast aboard the ship, we loaded a bus that took us on a tour, the ultimate highlights of Havana. 4 hours of sightseeing and getting the lay of the land. A tour that I highly recommend. It only costs $99, and that's through the cruise ship line. Our guide was born and raised in Havana and was very insightful. He had a great command of English and was open to questions about his life in a communist country. The tour took us all over Havana, and our tour guide gave us a history lesson from the Cuban point of view. Our first stop was to the Christopher Columbus Cemetery. It was very interesting, with elaborate graves and stones and, of course, ghost stories. It has 2.5 million people buried there. The population of Havana is 2.2 million. To get the full history of this historic cemetery, I would suggest that you hire a local guide. Our next stop was at the Statue of Christ. It is a 20-meter, or about 66 feet high, and is a commanding view of the Havana Harbor and Old Havana. The statue was commissioned by the wife of President Batista, who was the president of Cuba prior to being overthrown by Fidel Castro in 1959. One of the highlights of the tour, for me, was going to the Spanish fort that protects the Havana harbor. All of the ladies liked it because of the small souvenir shops. This was also where the government owned and operated cigar, rum, and coffee shops were located. Our guide was invaluable as a translator and a guide to the different kinds of cigars and tobacco. My lady friends pretty much had rum covered. Go figure. Havana is like a time capsule. All progress seems to have stopped about 1959, and that is what the allure of Havana and Cuba is all about. Make sure and walk around the streets of Old Havana. This will give you a full impression of Havana's living conditions. Feel safe. We felt very secure, but use the buddy system for peace of mind. We found the Cuban people to be very proud of their heritage and their country, as well they should. They were friendly, polite, and courteous. We were told that the U.S. dollars were not welcome and that you could actually be arrested for attempting to use them. This is not true. I spent dollars on cigars and rum in the government store. In fact, they almost seemed happier to get them. The exchange rate is not very favorable towards U.S. dollars, but that's kind of expected. Also, don't buy pesos from people on the streets. After walking the streets of Havana, it becomes apparent that one of the more important items to bring with you is toilet paper, and maybe even a toilet seat. No crap. TP is in high demand. After the tour, we had lunch aboard ship, and then we were off to explore the streets of Old Havana. One of the terminals at the harbor had been converted into a huge market filled with local crafts and Cuban souvenirs. This is a perfect place to practice your negotiation skills. You can never tell when a parade is going to break out. We were told to bring items like soap, toothpaste, toothbrushes, dental floss, pencils, combs, and other items that could be used by the Cuban people. Once you see someone you think is in need, give it to them. It won't go to waste. They are a poor people. As the sun set, all the ladies and I returned to the ship to have dinner, rest up, and a few cocktails. The next morning, we were off again to explore Havana and, most importantly, ride one of the hundreds of classic cars. They're virtually everywhere. Everyone wants to take a ride in one of these classic 1950s cars. Make sure that you negotiate the price before you get in the car. The price of the car ride is for 1 hour, and it's about $30, but usually will settle for about $25. Don't be afraid to haggle on the price of items that you want to buy. It is the custom, and it usually is expected, except by rich American gringos. But give it a try. It's fun, and maybe you'll save some money. You may want to look the car over to make sure it's working and won't stall out at each stop sign as you go down the road. Rubber on the tires is strictly optional. The Cubans get between $50 and $70 a month salary from the communist government. They still have ration cards for the staples like sugar, coffee, rice, and beans. If they want anything else, They must sell things or do odd jobs to earn extra money, or maybe simply drive a cat.
So the P on the license plate actually indicates that this is a private car, and I believe it's a B that indicates that it is owned by the government. All right, there we get Marilyn and Luis there. Hey!
At the end of your classic car ride, you will have a feeling of accomplishment. First of all, because you can scratch that off your bucket list, and secondly, because you actually live to tell about it. In closing, Marilyn and all my other travel companions agree that Cuba was an excellent place to visit. And we all agree that now that we know more about Cuba, we would enjoy going again for a longer stay.